Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to CaMMVetsMedia on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGurk with Ken Fraser bringing you this half hour a discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. Now, here's Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody listening to CaMMVetsMedia here on WVOX and CaMMVetsMedia channels that we cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. I want to thank my partner, Jack McGurk, for covering last week when I was out visiting family in Colorado, and I know he did a great job. And this morning I was up at West Point. Actually, it's they call it the March back of the freshman class. The 1,200 freshmen who were inducted the last week of June have been going through 6 weeks of cadet basic training, similar to what any soldier goes through in their first training sessions as soldiers in the U.S. Army. So they have a training facility out at Camp Buckner, which is about 10 miles west of the main part of the West Point campus. And so they finished the cadet basic training by a 12-mile march back to West Point in their training companies of about 115 each. And so they left at 3:30 this morning, led by the superintendent, Lieutenant General Steve Gillen, who we'll hear from a little bit in the second part of the show. And you know what was doing at 3:30 in the morning, Jack?
What?
It was pouring rain.
Yeah.
And so, they were saying in the Army, it's not training, it's not raining, but you don't really want to go out, that makes it tough. But as General Gillen told us afterwards, the new cadets and their leadership really persevered through the adverse weather and the 12-mile march up and down the mountain at West Point, and finished with a parade in front of the superintendent's house, which I got a chance to film. A lot of that up on our YouTube page. Jack, tell us stories you're following.
All right, starting off with what's happening in Ukraine. One of Russia's biggest oil tankers was struck by a maritime drone. Russian flagship, the Sea, was hit by a drone carrying about 992 pounds of TNT shortly before midnight. This was last week, according to Ukraine's security service source. The strike created a hole in the vessel's engine room and waterline on the starboard side, forcing the 11-strong crew to fight the water intake, according to Russian authorities. The flooding eventually stopped, but the strike on the Sea came just hours after Ukrainian sea drones targeted a major naval vessel in the Novorossiysk, a coastal city on the Black Sea. It's home to Russia's largest port by volume of cargo handled. An amphibious Russian landing ship was hit, leaving it tilted badly and sitting very low in the water. And Ukraine has stepped up its attacks using unmanned aerial vehicles in recent weeks, hitting targets well within Russian territory, including Moscow. Weapons and the new generation of powerful sea drones, however, could open up a new front for Kyiv in the conflict. Weapons are fast, semi-submersible drones and are
semi-submersible.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm. And proving very difficult to defend against. They can easily launched at sea, and at least some variants are capable of traveling several hundred miles to their target. So we've talked about the use of drones, aerial drones in Ukraine. Now they're using sea drones in ports to destroy ships.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's what U.S. Navy has feared about some of the adversaries developing long-range torpedoes.
Mm-hmm.
But now when you basically are doing something more sophisticated as an underwater drone, that's really where warfare is at. U.S. Navy is developing a lot of capability in that area, in undersea drones. And then you make drones into missiles that can attack buildings or can attack ships. That is a new style of warfare, remote control. I mean, we used to have, smart missiles that the U.S. military could use in attacks on military installations, trying to avoid civilian damage. But this is a whole new thing, and a lot of new technology. You don't know exactly where this technology is coming from, but it's on display.
Indeed, and Moscow unleashed a massive missile and drone barrage on western Ukraine Sunday. This is following through on a promise to retaliate for that attack on the Russian tanker. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 70 drones and missiles from aircraft over the Caspian Sea, including Iranian-made Shahed UAVs. 3 waves of missiles hit the Starokostianov area, damaging several buildings and igniting a fire at a warehouse. And strike may have been intended for the city's airfield, officials said. But so Russia retaliating for that attack on the tanker with a big barrage of drones and missiles there.
Well, it's getting, the war of attrition. Who's got more missiles? Who's got more drones? Who can more effectively deploy them? Who's got defenses against them? Can jam missiles and drones? It's all high-tech warfare, and it's not necessarily being played out on the ground on that border area, which the Russians have, put so many mines down to make it tough for the Ukrainians to take back. So we'll see. I mean, just a lot of damage being impacted on a lot of innocent people.
And the White House on Thursday said U.S. intelligence officials have determined that Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu spoke last week to North Korean officials during a visit to Pyongyang about increasing the sale of munitions to Moscow for its war on Ukraine. Now, Shoigu made the pitch during his visit to North Korea for events marking the 70th anniversary of the armistice that halted fighting from the Korean War in 1953. There had been previous accusations of Russia exchanging food for ammunition from North Korea. But I guess if the defense minister is making this deal, it sounds like they need the ammunition. We've talked about previously on the show how both the Russians and Ukrainians are just plowing through their ammunition every day in this war. So now I guess they're going to North Korea to try to get more.
Well, it's unclear how much I guess the North Koreans have. But they are producing a lot of missiles and other types of ammunition. So you'd like to keep the North Koreans out of this if possible.
And the U.S. military is considering putting armed personnel on commercial ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz in what would be an unheard of action aimed at stopping Iran from seizing and harassing civilian vessels. Since 2019, Iran has seized a series of ships in the strait, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, as part of its efforts to pressure the West over negotiations regarding its collapsed nuclear deal with world's powers. Now, the contemplated move would represent an extraordinary commitment by the Mideast by U.S. forces as the Pentagon tries to focus on Russia and China. But while U.S. forces, as the Pentagon and America, didn't even take it one step during the so-called tanker war, which culminated in the U.S. Navy and Iran fighting a one-day naval battle in 1988. While officials offered few details on the plan, it comes as thousands of Marines and sailors, both the amphibious assault ship USS Bataan and USS Carter Hall landing ship, are on their way to the Persian Gulf. Those Marines and sailors could provide the backbone for any armed guard mission in the Strait through 20% of the world's crude oil passes. But that would be pretty extraordinary, having armed personnel on commercial ships going through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. I'd like to get one of our friends in the Navy League to explain why that is such a hard, fast principle to not arm merchant ships. You kind of think that would be commonplace when you've got these, the amount of piracy that goes on off the coast of Africa. But now, and I guess the Navy doesn't have enough destroyers to go out and escort the ships off, that are passing off of Iran. And that's a limiting factor. But putting Marines on cargo ships, the question is whose flag do they operate under? I mean, most of the cargo ships are not U.S. flag. They're from some other country, country of convenience. So that would be interesting. But I'd like to ask one of our Navy League friends for what the legal, there's legal statutes on when it's allowable to put military members onto a commercial ship.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this story a while back about the National Guardsman up in Cape Cod who was caught leaking classified information. Now, last week, there was the story of 2 San Diego-based sailors that have been arrested and charged with providing sensitive military information to China, U.S. federal officials announced on Thursday. Machinist mate third class Jin Chao Wei, assigned to the amphibious assault ship Essex, and construction electrician second class Wenjing Zhao, Naval Construction Group 1, were charged in the separate indictments Now, Wei was arrested on a charge relating to espionage involving conspiracy to send national defense information to a Chinese intelligence official not identified in his indictment. Zhao was accused of taking bribes in exchange for providing sensitive U.S. Navy photos and videos to a Chinese intelligence officer, according to U.S. officials. Both of them appeared in federal court and pled not guilty to the charges, but these are pretty serious charges, Ken.
Yeah, they're not going to see the light of day for a long time. One of the questions that came up with the incident in Cape Cod with the young Air Force airmen was that why are these junior people having access to classified information? And one of the reasons is that the military has tried to make important information or potentially important information more available so that different areas of the military can react to problems that they can identify in this information. But it leads to junior people mishandling this classified information.
Indeed, we'll have to keep an eye on the story. You've been listening to CaMMVetsMedia on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief AP news break, so stay tuned.
This is WVOX.
In the north end of New Rochelle, you'll find an absolutely top-notch printer, one of the very best in the entire county. Minuteman Press is known for its fine work far beyond the Sound Shore area. In fact, this particular Minuteman Press is certainly the class of when it comes to full-service community printing. Located just off North Avenue in New Rochelle in the narrow Waikagill walkway across the parking lot from Acme, Minuteman Press is a terrific resource for individual and small to medium-sized companies. Want something very special when it comes to printing. No matter how big or how small your needs,
And maybe we'll go to Coach
the skill
Maybe
and
we'll just go those
craftsmanship
two, and then
Minuteman
we'll
is
go to
known
Coach
for
Morgan.
at very reasonable prices. From business cards to brochures, color copies, high-speed printing, individual booklets and flyers,
And,
it's Minuteman Press. Down
And
that
maybe
walkway
we'll-
when
yeah,
you're
it's the
headed
first
to Acme,
one. How much
offering
is that?
quality
4 minutes?
printing at very
So
good
probably get
prices.
squeezed
Call
three
Minuteman
interviews
Press in
in
New
there.
Rochelle,
We'll do those two.
576-0335, 914-576-0335.
Westchester's favorite morning show.
I love the morning show.
Good Morning Westchester with Dennis and Tommy. Weekday mornings from 6 to 9. Right here on 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to CaMMVetsMedia on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. Now I'll start with a story out of North Korea. We've mentioned the story about U.S. Army Private Second Class Travis King, who is in North Korea. The North Koreans have acknowledged that he's there, but basically that's about it that we're hearing from North Korea. But basically, King was a cavalry scout in the Army since January 2021, and he raced across the border from South Korea to North Korea on July 18th and was immediately detained on the other side. Now, he had been charged, spent 47 days for assault charges in a South Korean detention facility stemming from an altercation with locals. He was supposed to, following his release, fly back to Fort Bliss in Texas, where he could have faced additional military disciplinary actions and discharge for this service, but instead managed to escape his escorts at the airport outside of Seoul and then made his way back to the demilitarized zone and crossed the border. So the North Koreans are acknowledging he's there, but they're not really saying much about it.
Well, I don't think it was a very good decision to kind of lose your military escorts that were taking you back to the United States and decide to go back and cross the border into North Korea, because you never know how the North Koreans are going to treat you. At least in the U.S. Military justice system, the charges might not have been, he might have been sentenced, but he may have been discharged. But he's not going to be, but he's back in the United States. He's not in North Korea. I can't think of a worse place to be than North Korea.
Absolutely. And shifting gears a little bit to West Point, football season's coming up pretty soon, but construction on the Mikey Stadium Preservation Project has been put on temporary delay, announced by the athletic director, our friend Mike Buddy. The project was originally slated to break ground this summer and open by the start of the 2025 football campaign. However, the difficult decision to delay the project was made after evaluating several circumstances, including the unprecedented rise in the cost of construction across the industry coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in a 92% increase in the project's cost compared with the initial estimates announced in 2019. Also, the recent storm and related flooding caused significant damage at West Point, and that also played a big factor in this. But momentum in sales continued to build for Michie Stadium Preservation Project, as 100% of suites and 81% of loads boxes in the proposed new east stands have been sold. The AWPAA will provide an update on the project following the 2023 football season, and will, with an anticipated target of opening for the renovated stadium ahead of the 2026 season. So, fortunate they have a delay there, but maybe 2026 season will have the stadium all done by then.
Well, I know the people who bought the boxes are anxious for that to happen.
Oh, yeah.
But construction costs are way up. West Point is also building a new cyber engineering building that was estimated to be about $100 million initially, and now it's estimated at $217 million, but a vital building that is now has a frame up ahead actually cut into the rock to create space for it. Yeah, on the Michie Stadium project, they're going to delay it. The overall damage to West Point from that storm on July 9th is $111 million. And we saw this morning part of Washington Road. Basically, if you know where the Catholic Chapel is, heading past the cemetery towards where there is a group of retail stores, that's where that road is out, which is a vital part of the thoroughfare. There's also several academic buildings that have to be repaired due to flooding in their basements where there was equipment and storage and facilities. And they need to get the money out of Congress, so they need to get a $100 million appropriation, and they want to issue bids on a number of these more extensive repair projects in September. But the budget year for the Army ends in the military at the end of September. It's not, you can't anticipate what's going to happen with the defense budget this year. And it could be a continuing resolution, which would make it very difficult to start issue new contracts. In fact, they're not technically not allowed to. So we'll see what happens on that one.
And kind of an unfortunate story out of West Point. U.S. Army Garrison West Point Commander Colonel Anthony Bianchi was suspended. The U.S. Army Garrison West Point Commander has been suspended of his duties for alleged conduct pending the outcome of an investigation statement from West Point. They're being very hush-hush about that, understandably, but Anthony Bianchi, the colonel there, he is a West Point alum. He played football up there, class of 1997. He was commissioned as a field officer from West Point after graduating in 97, and deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan during his career. But an unfortunate story there. Not sure what's going on there with Colonel Bianchi.
It is. I know Colonel Bianchi a little bit. Nice man. He's got a young family, and we'll just have to see what happens on that. I mean, there was no comment on what the particular matter was, but are you all done?
Well, I got one last story.
One last one.
Yeah, from Naval Academy. Noah Song, we talked about him. He's a pitcher from Naval Academy. His month-long audition was not good enough to earn a roster spot with the Phillies, but the Phillies had designated him for assignment, and the Phillies had 4 days to trade him before having to place him on irrevocable waivers. If Song clears waivers, he must be offered back to the Red Sox for $25,000. Philadelphia selected the Naval Academy graduate 2019 out of Boston's minor league system via a Rule 5 draft last December. Now, per Rule 5 restrictions, the Phillies were required to keep Song on the active roster for at least 90 days. However, his performance during the 30-day rehabilitation assignment did not warrant using a valuable roster spot for him for a team currently in second place in the National League East. So we'll have to keep an eye. Maybe he'll end up back with the Red Sox.
Question is he going to go back to the Navy?
Yeah, that's
the question. I met him. He actually pitched the win over Army when Army-Navy baseball played at Fenway Park about 5 years ago. And he's a talented baseball player, but it's hard to make it up to the major leagues. And okay, let's talk a little bit. We after the march back of 1,200 freshmen from their training center at Camp Buckner to the main part of the West Point campus past the superintendent's house, we had a chance to talk with the superintendent of West Point. That is Lieutenant General Steve Gill. West Point on March Back Day. We had a chance to talk with the superintendent of the U.S. Military Academy, General Steve Gillen, and the new first captain, Martin Van der Wal. And General Gillen, good to see you. What was March Back Day like for you? You were leading the whole formation through the rain and on the 12-mile march back here to the post.
Well, sir, I would say that today's march back is symbolic of developing leaders of character. Walking through the rain, 12 to 14 miles up some pretty good hills, develops grit. It develops tenacity, the ability to face some adversity, i.e. the rain pouring down on you. And you know what? Our new cadets they got back and they look pretty darn good.
Absolutely. They've accomplished so much since we saw them at our day and marched back with their full packs and uniform today. What's it like to see that transformation?
Well, I think it's pretty neat that over the course of 6 weeks that you witness, people who have come from all over the world, from all different backgrounds and upbringings and value sets, and they come together with common goals and common objectives. And that's the transformation that occurs from our day to now, as they are all oriented on making the road march back from Camp Frederick or Lake Frederick here to the cadet area.
Very good. And we have the first captain here. Well, we talked a little bit about what your role responsibilities will be. What will the general expect from you as first captain this year, do you think?
Yes, sir. Well, I think he's primarily just talking about the highlights of this summer, taking the energy that we have over there with the incoming class and all the great work we saw out at field training and taking that into the academic year. So I think what we all love about the summer is the team mentality, and I think we're going to really focus on that as we move into the academic year, bringing that energy along with us.
General, final thought, classes start in a week here. We were up at football practice the other day. Team is getting set. What are your thoughts about starting out a new academic year and a full athletic season?
I think it's opportunity. That's what I believe. We have, as we look at not only the academics and then our athletic competitions, it's an opportunity to demonstrate excellence for all of our teams and all of our cadets. And that's what I think that we'll do best as we head into this fall.
Very good. Thank you both. First Captain Martin Van der Wal and the Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, Lieutenant General. Great opportunity to talk to the Superintendent at West Point, General Steve Gillen, and his new First Captain, Martin Van der Wal. And let's play a little bit. I was at football practice on Saturday. West Point Black Knights got through the first week. They got a new offense. Let's hear a little bit from the head coach, Jeff Bunkin, about the first week of football practice at West Point. West Point for Army football practice, and I have a chance to talk to the head coach, Army football, and that is Jeff Bunkin. And Coach, end of your first week, you got several practices in. What are you thinking about how it's going so far?
Oh, it's hard to pass judgment on day 4. We were in shells the last 2 days. I thought today was the best work we had because we were able to get some interaction, and that was positive. There's plenty of things we got to get better at, but the guys are practicing hard. The spirits are great, and I'm really encouraged by the rookies we got out here.
Good to see Tyson Riley, Jacoby Buchanan, that you're too big. In the old offense called the fullback, I guess, but they're out there running, catching passes. How do you see them so far in the summer?
They're both doing a good job. It's nice to see Jacoby back out here healthy, and Tyson too. Hopefully we can keep those guys healthy. In the running back position, what's interesting is to see some of those slot back types as well as those old B-back or fullback type guys all playing the same position, and really, it's any size guy. It's not there's not certain positions for certain body types or anything like that. They're all learning that position, and they've all got value based on their skill sets.
Very good. And I thought Bryson Daly had a number of solid completions today, and also Dwayne Coleman's been out there and Alex Meredith. How do you see your quarterbacks progressing so far?
Those 3 guys that you mentioned, the veteran guys, they're doing a good job. Jacob Azizi is out here. He was hurt all last year, so he's out here really for the first time, taking reps. And then he's doing a good job. It's just, he got to knock some rust off. I'm really disappointed that Zach Mundell is not out there and able to practice right now. Hopefully he's going to get healthy pretty soon. and that kind of rounds out the veteran guys. But the freshman group, there's a couple of guys in that group that I'm really impressed with, and I'm anxious to see them go through the next couple of days, the full pads practice that we'll have on Tuesday, and then the scrimmage next Saturday, and just really see how far they've come along. But that's encouraging to see some young guys that we feel really good about.
And on defense, until you get to pads, maybe it's harder to see, but watching Trey Sophia out there, linebacker, of course, Leo Lowen, and some of the other veterans, how do you feel about the defense so far?
They're a really athletic, aggressive group of guys. We're not particularly big, but we got some good athletes out there. A guy like Austin Hill.
Keep listening to CaMMVetsMedia Media on WVOX 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We thank today's special guests, Army Head Coach Jeff Monk and Lieutenant General Steve Gillen, West Point Superintendent, and First Captain Martin Vanderwall. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, CaMMVets Media, our C-Sources page, our Ariana Basketball Report page, and our West Point Football Report page. And until next week, remember to thank a veteran.
Okay, put you through in a moment. All right.